guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ryan. I'm the content creator behind Revived by Ryan. In my videos, I'll be sharing my experience of taking an old worn piece of furniture and transforming it into a brand new piece. I'll be sharing my tips and tricks on how to flip them on Facebook Marketplace for a profit, so don't forget to subscribe.
First thing I do when I begin a project is look for any nicks or bangs that I may have to fix further in the project. I then prepare to take off all the hardware. Luckily, these were just fine wee pin nail hardware, so it was just a matter of unplugging them, pulling them right out. I always begin by hoovering my projects first because most of the time they're in storage units and they've picked up cobwebs and different types of debris. I then go over it with a simple degreaser. Dawn or fairy liquid is all I would generally use, just something to get off the dirt and grime and grease. Once I give it a good scrub, I dry it off with just a normal cloth. Once the unit had completely dried, I then went over it with a 180 grit sandpaper. I'm using my Orbital sander reduced right down to the slowest speed. When sanding, make sure your Orbital sander isn't too high of a speed or you'll scratch the surface and you'll have to re-sand it again. I then use a folded sanding disc to get in the crevices and the corners of the drawers in order for the primer and paint to adhere properly. I then look for gouges or any indentations in the furniture that I'd have to seal up with any wood filler. Once the wood filler had completely dried, I then went over it with a 180 grit sandpaper again just to level it all out. Once finished sanding, I then went over the piece with my hoover with the brush attachment in order to pick up any last dust residue. I always use the brush attachment in order to not scratch the surface of the wood. I then wipe the entire piece down with a cloth. When priming, I always use Zinsser's BIN shellac based primer and sealer. It's great for preventing any tannins or leaking through your final piece once you've finished painting it. It's a very strong odour and it's a very messy product, so I always line my paint tray in tin foil to ensure an easy cleanup afterwards. I use a mini microfiber roller and a 1.5 inch brush. Once finished with your roller, wrap it up into a sandwich bag and keep it in the fridge for further use, as it'll last 4 or 5 more times. After the first coat of primer had completely dried, I noticed tannins were still bleeding through, so I decided to give it a second coat. I left the second coat of primer to dry overnight, and when I came back the following day there was no more bleeding and it was ready for sanding. When sanding the piece down, I use a super fine 240 grit sandpaper. This is to ensure the surface is as smooth and flat as possible. It eliminates any brush marks and any dried clumps of paint that may have been left from priming. When sanding, ensure to go over it lightly, as too heavy or too high a setting on your Orbital sander will end up gouging your piece. For this piece, I am using Johnstones Chalky furniture paint in Teal Topaz. Every chalk paint has a thick texture, so for every 400 milliliters, I mix it with 30 milliliters of water to thin it out nicely. For most of my projects, I use my Wagner paint spray gun, as it leaves a super flat finish and there's no need for sanding afterwards. Depending on the consistency of the paint, I will generally give about 2 hours between each coat to dry. coverage of this paint was fantastic and all it needed was 2 coats. To complete my piece, I'll be using Rustoleum's Finishing Wax in clear and dark. I firstly coat the entire piece with Rustoleum's clear wax using my 1.5 wax brush. Ensure the entire piece has been coated liberally with the clear wax. This allows you to perfectly blend the dark wax when applied. When applying the dark wax, get into the grooves and edges. This ensures an authentic edged vintage look piece. The clear wax undercoat allows you to blend the dark wax to your desired effect. If you feel you have applied too much dark wax, you can also go over it with clear wax. This ensures an easier blend. If the piece has detail on the sides and on the drawers like this, always ensure to get the dark wax in those grooves as it gives it such a great vintage authentic look. When I have finished coating my piece in the clear and dark wax, I then go around the entire piece with a lint-free cloth wrapped around my fingertip, wiping away any excess, and this also allows me to get the desired effect for the final look. Although Rustoleum's finishing wax dries within 20 minutes, allow up to 30 days for it to cure entirely, depending on humidity. For the hardware, I'm using these vintage brass handles which I got from Amazon. I feel they work perfectly with the look. This is how the piece looked before, and this is how it looked after.
Thanks for watching today's video. If you liked today's transformation, don't forget to drop a comment and a like down below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.